Welcome to the Community Warehouse. This is Imran Nanlawala, and I'm here with my co-host, the amazing Habeeb Quadri. Habeeb, Community Warehouse, Episode 2. Are you ready?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm ready for it. This is great.
So
Let's,
we have, go ahead.
no, let's go. I'm just excited about the community warehouse. We're gonna be developing, learning,
So we're
discussing,
gonna.
making it happen.
So last week we had an educator in the warehouse, and we pulled her out. We ordered her services and her knowledge, and we learned a lot. Today we're gonna pull out a expert, someone who started off in the educational realm, but has now transformed into an expert on leadership and entrepreneurship and coaching. So we have an amazing individual on today, Adnan Jalali, someone that you know very well, someone that I know, and he is internationally recognized in leadership and personal development. He's given seminars, trained company personnel, and coached CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners across 4 continents in various industries, including transportation, healthcare, finance, and government education, tech startups, waste management, and much more. He was born in Karachi, Pakistan, grew up in Houston, has lived in Doha, Qatar, and is currently residing in Colombia. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Adnan. Adnan, how you doing?
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Yeah,
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me.
no, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. And this is great because I'm getting to see a man who went into the same field as me in education. But I got to figure out like what changed from the field of education to now being with the big dogs, the CEO leaders, and educating them and coaching them. So I gotta get a feel for it and saying, hey, like, so what happened, man? Nah, we're excited. We're excited, bro.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I don't know if you want me to respond now or that was just an intro.
No, we're going right to it. We're going to right to it. I got you represented. I got Olajuwon in the back for you. Representing the Houston Rockets, right?
That's what I'm saying.
But
That's what I'm saying.
but the jersey next to it is the GOAT. But I got to give a. But we're excited to really have you here, and then and even though I know it's joking aside, but I do want to know that question, man. Like because we're going to go right into it. We're going to pick your brains in these next 30 minutes, buddy.
No, I appreciate you, man. Thank you guys so much for having me. Imran, Habeeb. Imran, I don't know if you know, but Habeeb was like super instrumental in me becoming a school principal. Habeeb, obviously was someone I used to play basketball against. He was like a legend. I used to hear about this tall guy in Chicago who was a baller. And at that point in the early 90s, Desi ballers were few and far between. So I always used to hear about this guy, Habeeb. And then I went to play in a tournament in Chicago and I saw him play and, he lived up to the hype, mashallah. And so over the years past, I became a teacher and then I started learning about leadership. After I met a man by the name of John Maxwell. Actually, no, that's later on. Sorry, I came across his book first, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I read that book and it changed my life. And that's what really got me into leadership or thinking about leadership. And so then when I thought, okay, as a school teacher, how to become a better leader. And then, of course, as I projected my career, I thought the next transition would be into school principalship. School leadership, and the only like young, active, awesome, dynamic male Muslim leader in education that I knew about in the whole country was Habeeb. So I was lucky enough to to connect with him and really get some guidance from him, and really more than anything follow his example, because he had set such an amazing example out in Chicago for the rest of us, few Muslim male educators throughout the country. He was really the OG. And so, to be here years later on the show with him is a great honor for me.
Appreciate it, man. Much love to you, brother. Much love to you.
So it's interesting, because obviously education attracts a certain type of individual, right? I'm a former educator. Habeeb is an ongoing educator. And I think, even yourself, even though you've transitioned into leadership, you're still an educator because now you're educating people on leadership. But
100%.
what similarities, when you started studying John Maxwell's works and got trained with John Maxwell, what similarities did you see between leadership and leadership training and academia / education?
Well, I mean, to me, it's all education, right? I mean, I feel like I'm still in the the education field. I'm just educating CEOs rather than kids, you know.
Mhm.
So I think it was a natural transition for me, in the sense that once I became a school principal, I loved it. I enjoyed it. It was very tough, uh, as Habeeb knows very well, especially the first few years, as you're getting used to it. But alhamdulillah, was able to see a lot of success, using a lot of the principles I learned through the John Maxwell team and so many other things that I learned and read over the years. So alhamdulillah, was able to have a lot of success very quickly as a principal. And so I got to the point where I thought to myself, okay, I think I can do this job. I've proved it in 2 different schools, and I know I can do a lot more. And so the next step in education, the formal education setting, was to be a superintendent, right? And then at that time, and Habeeb, I know we'll probably differ in this, but I kind of was moving against the whole system, the way the education system is established now. So I thought, okay, I don't want to be a superintendent because I don't even believe in the whole structure that much anymore. And so we can have a separate conversation about that one day and why. But my thing was, okay, how can I make the biggest impact? And so, when you study leadership, you know that the biggest impact you can make is leading leaders, because you make an impact on one life who's impacting thousands, tens of thousands of lives. So if you make an impact on that one person, then you, by way of working with him or her, you've impacted, tens of thousands of people. So that was the impetus in me going into leadership coaching, because I really wanted to lead leaders. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So being like and because the uniqueness is that you have been in the education field, and a lot of our individuals who listen to this are educators, and now that you've kind of coaching CEO leaders, where it might be in the education field, but business field and all the other factors, you've kind of done all the different categories and the fields that are there. What are you noticing are like, man, these are few skill sets or areas of concerns that you've kind of picked up and saying, I have to keep on reminding them this or teaching them this to these leaders who are already leaders. What are some things that we could kind of keep in mind and saying the people are listening here, that area that we should be focusing on?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, the reason why I love coaching is because more than doing workshops, I mean, usually I'll start off working with the company doing workshops because it's kind of the easiest way to get your foot in the door. And then they kind of see what you're about, and I work with the, kind of everybody in the company or a selected group. And then I'll typically have that conversation of, listen, if you really want to change, you need to change yourself, as the owner, right? Or as the CEO. Right. If you really want to make change, it has to start from here. Because once a leader changes, I mean, the impact is seen throughout the organization. So the reason why I like coaching is because I get to kind of dive into different worlds, right? So I get to study their world, who they are as a person, what's their background, what context do they live and work in. So I actually, a lot of times, travel with them. I attend their meetings. Sometimes I even stay with them in their house, or they stay in my house. Like we become very close. So I really get to understand what makes them tick. And so based on that, that's where I'll give them the advice, right? It's like a doctor, right? Like, you have to check the patient to figure out what medicine you want to give them, so it's not kind of cookie cutter, right? So that's kind of my approach. But however, as you know, Habeeb, having studied leadership and teaching leadership at Harvard and all these other places that you teach leadership, that really the two main skills as far as leadership is concerned is effective communication and emotional intelligence. I mean, based on all the research, right? So if you're going to point to any two things, I would start there. Yeah.
So before we shift gears, because there's a direction we want to take this conversation, but I have as someone who's a former educator. So now that you are at whatever phase of your journey you're on as a leader and as a former school educator, right? Obviously, you're still educating. What advice do you have generally? Because a lot of our viewers are actually ongoing educators, people who are teaching at schools. So, what
Okay.
advice would you give educators to enhance their performance in the classroom? And so, educators on one side, and on the other side, what advice would you give educational leaders like principals?
Okay, a great question. I wish you told me that earlier. I wouldn't have said what I said about the system.
We'll cut
Anyway,
that out.
This is good because people need to hear all aspects, right? That's how you become better, right? So no, you just tell it like it is. Well, we're going to follow up on that question. Don't worry about that conversation.
no. Yeah, I mean, I actually would like to follow up because I can explain. Anyway, so as far as educators are concerned, some advice I would say is for them to study leadership. I became a better teacher because I studied leadership. Because at the end of the day, your job is to lead kids. You want to get them here and take them here, right? And the vehicle is whatever subject you're teaching. But the greatest teachers, and you know this, Habeeb, they're all about improving the person, right? The subject is part of it, and that's the context that you're working in. But the goal is also always to build better human beings, right? Human beings that are more ready to go and be successful in this world and the next, right? And so as educators, my advice would be to learn leadership because it'll help you tremendously in your teaching. And then number two, I would say is just go attend as many conferences, as many trainings as you can, because every bit of training that you get adds to your kind of repertoire, right? I always used to give the basketball analogy of Kobe, right? It seems like every year, watching Kobe's entire career, every year he'd come back with a new move, even more than Michael Jordan, I would argue. In terms of specific moves, I thought Kobe had more moves than Michael Jordan. I know that's,
Gotcha.
I know that's touching on sacred ground, but
All right, folks, and that's all the time we got today. Until next week when we have our next guest.
No. Hey, but this is why I think what Adnan's saying is like that first part is linked back to education, because for our leader, there's two areas he talks about, which is huge: communication, right? And if you take communication, right, because one of the things I want to follow with, Adnan, in your mind, when you take communication, right, and when we have it look at it from the listening, writing, and speaking. In your mind, which of the three would you tell an educator or even a leader would be the most important? The writing aspect of it, the speaking aspect of it, or the listening aspect of it?
Oh, of course, listening. Of course,
right?
listening. Of course.
Yeah. And you have that
because
yeah.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's why. And why would you say listening from before those two?
Because again, you don't understand what medicine people need until you listen to who they are, what they're about, where are they. That's why, like, I never had discipline problems with my kids. Like when I was a teacher for 10 years, I didn't, or actually 8 years of just teaching, and then 10, and then a few of teaching and being a principal. So out of all those years, I had problems with 2 kids. Okay, out of probably over 1,000 or a couple thousand students that I had a problem with 2 kids. One was killed in a gang-related thing. I mean, that's how, like, he was gone, right? And the other one, it was in jail because he used to sell drugs on school campus. So these are the 2 kids that I had an issue with. That's it. And those were extreme cases. The rest of the kids I got along with because I actually got to know them. I asked them where they live, tell me about, got to know their families, got to know what their likes and dislikes were. Sometimes I'd show up with a gift for one of my students if they did well, not the ones that did the best necessarily, but the ones that I saw put in the most effort. If they were into something, I would get them a gift related to that, and I give it to them after class. Hey man, I really appreciate your work, bro. Here's a gift for me. I love how much you're working. Things like that, right? To kind of connect you know, to each kid. Yeah, and so yeah, listening is the only way you're gonna know all that stuff is by listening.
Yeah, and I think, well, you know, Adnan, I think you're hitting a huge point here, because when you're talking even leaders that, hey, you need to listen, so give them the right medicine. Educators, what you're trying to do is give them the right medicine. You're trying to disseminate the information in a way that is attainable for that child to understand.
Exactly.
And I could see where educators have that issue. Like, well, if you try to follow the system, so, well, this is the only way. And I think that's why people have, you know, we got to get out of that and say, there are parameters for education, but then you need to kind of figure out and customize it for that classroom, for that grade, for that department, for that administration, and I think for even those parents, and saying, how do we go about doing that? So I think that just those two are the same answers for them, because if you could get the right, listen to them rightly, then you're going to speak to them in the proper way, and you're going to write the lesson and the objective in the most proper way for them to, you know, just kind of soak it in. So
exactly.
I mean, I think what you brought up is a very key point, and that's that first part of what you're just saying, man. You know, I mean, Mr. Adnan, you know.
No, I mean, and that's what education is, right? Like, we're not dealing with robots.
Yes.
We're dealing with human beings, right? And so every human being is different, has different talents, has different things about them that are great. But I tell you what, you know, now I have students, I still hang out with a lot of my ex-students. Like, now they're all grown adults. And I mean, I've hung out with ex-students of mine in London, in Toronto, in LA, in Colombia, in Dubai. Like, I'm still connected to so many of my ex-students. And it's amazing. There were so many kids who struggled academically. And I used to tell the parents, like, relax, don't worry. This is a great kid. Give him time, or her time. You know, the most important thing that I've seen that made kids have gone on to be successful years later, and you know this, Habeeb, because you've seen now kids when they were young and now when they're adults, is good character. If they have good character, somehow, some way, they figure it out. You know? And so anyway, that's just
no,
sorry,
but that's your point, because that's the second thing you brought up, was the social emotional aspect, right? Social emotional is character, right? And throughout history, take away from the system, you know, like of education system in the 1900s, but if you look at other learning history, it was also that relationship. When we watch, you know, go back to movies here, Karate Kid, what was it? Miyagi took him, understood him, made him do these things. Any great sports app coach, they make them go break it down, understand them. And when you're telling me that you're hanging out with them, talking to them, because one part of listening is to understand the social emotional aspect of that person. And the only way you're going to do that is when you get into their world, right? And for us educators, we got to get into their world. But even as a leader, you just got to do the same thing. So, man, what you just bring in is, it's profound. And I want everyone understanding here is to realize, is when we start opening our eyes to what Adnan is bringing up is huge. Is a key. So I mean, hey, you're not like far away, man. You're hitting the right points, Adnan, man. Just keep talking about that social emotional aspect of it, bro.
No, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, you're dealing with human beings. You know, that's the thing we have to always remember as teachers. They're gonna have good days, bad days, ups and downs. I mean, they're kids, right? Or they're young adults. The thing is to continue to be patient, to continue to show love. You know, be tough when you need to be tough. You know, but always from a place of love and care, and, you know, and always worried about them as people first and foremost, you know?
So I'm gonna transition to another part of the interview. Obviously, the name of the show is The Community Warehouse. So you mentioned social emotional intelligence, you mentioned effective communication. Obviously, as someone who taught in the community, right, and we're talking about cultural, socio-cultural community, maybe even religious community, and someone who's consulted for various organizations in the community, do you find that there are similarities in terms of issues that our schools are facing and our communities at large are facing, whether they be places of worship, just other non-for-profit organizations that serve different aspects of our community?
Sure. You know, I'm probably not the best person to comment on that now, because I've been a little bit removed from the community at large. I mean, I live in Dallas now, but I've been living in Colombia the last 6 years, right? So, You know, I'm a little bit removed, so it wouldn't be fair for me to kind of comment on that now, because I know things were changing. I know traditionally we had a lot of issues, right, with just doing things in a professional manner, you know.
So let
But
me
yeah,
let me tailor that question more to make it a little easier. So let's forget about just necessarily our community, but when
sure.
you've worked with other communities, smaller communities or smaller organizations, regardless of where they are there any correlations or are there any similarities in terms of the issues that get brought up? Because, for example, when I think of religious schools or even private schools, it seems like the issues they have are very similar to the issues that our places of worship have, the same issues that our cultural centers have, the same issues that our smaller corporations and smaller
Yeah,
non-for-profits that are
sure.
run by people in our community have. And again, not to put you on blast, not in a bad way, but I'm saying obviously to keep confidentiality. But I've been part of some of your trainings, right, for other organizations. So I know that you still do consult with a variety
Sure.
of organizations and offer leadership help. So just kind of general themes that you've noticed.
Sure. No, I mean, it's an interesting question. You know, as far as I would say, look, man, it really boils down to people development, like people and team development. Those are obviously another two abilities of leaders that they have to do. They have to be able to develop people and get those people to work well together as a team. And I think that's what that's what it comes down to. I mean, you know, I remember that so when I got my master's in educational leadership, I learned a lot, but there was really one piece of advice that a professor gave me that was worth the 30,000 or whatever it cost for the masters. He said, listen, if you hire the right people and build the right culture, you'll have a great school. Like all the other details will work themselves out. So that's what I focused on, was hiring and developing the right people and also firing the right people, right, who weren't there for the sake of the kids. And building the right culture, which means working together in a way that produces a beautiful culture within the school environment or within any company, right? So to me, it's all about people development, developing people and developing teams. And so what's happened in our masajid, for example, is that they invest in the buildings, but they don't invest in the people that are going to occupy those buildings. And it's very backwards to really the sunnah, of the Prophet, right? The Sunnah of the Prophet, he didn't build massive. He could have, if you think about it, he could have commanded his people, listen, I want you to build a massive pyramid like the ones in Egypt or a massive mausoleum, but he didn't. He built people. He built leaders, right? And those leaders went on to build structures and societies and governments and so many things. So I think that's really at the root of what we need to do, is develop people. I think once you focus on developing people, kind of the rest, comes out of that.
Hey, and for all the audience here, it's very important. I really think about this, because even though we might be talking about leadership and it might be in a school setting, but even for parents who are listening to this, or even any communities, the two concepts he talked about, and this third one he just added on. First, the idea of communicating, even as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, whatever, you need to make sure, right? Why do we always, what's the biggest spouse things? You never listen to me, right? You like to tell me, but you don't like to listen to me. What does a kid says? Oh, all you do is yell at me, but you don't listen to me in my life, in my world, right? So in that same way, as Adnan talks about the leaders going, when he goes and sees them, parents, we have to see what's going on in their lives. What's their world like? The world of my kids is not the same world. Even though I grew up here, I deal with kids. I have to now manage or teach my kids from their level of what they're perceiving in their environment is still different from the 90s, right? And from the music could be different, from the clothing, from the lingo to what's hot, what's not. So I think that played a big part. So I want everyone to realize, taking this concept of the communication, listening, understanding, the way we speak to them plays a big part. Also the social, emotional, that the way we were like, man, we were tough. Man, like this, I can't believe that's what you call this bullying. What's happening now? That bullying was when we were called names, Hindu, Gandhi, throwing stuff at, whitewash, right? Where I'm like, man, these kids are soft. But at this time, it's a different ball game and the way we perceive stuff. So I think that plays that. And that last part of that personal development of them, because I want to kind of follow into this one other thing that I've had the opportunity to read something of yours, is this person development. So because as leaders, as he's talked about, as you're coaching, one of the things you're trying to build them. So you wrote this book, Chasing 100, man. What's that Chasing 100? Like, what was the purpose of it? Because there's like 7 little a few different chapters that kind of build onto this whole process of self-development. So if you could kind of give us some little kind of, tidbits, and I really want everyone Chasing 100. You could tell me, where they could look, where they could get that. Phenomenal book. I love the book. Easy read. That's the easy part. I'm not an intellectual kind of guy, but it has concepts for intellectuals, but then also practical things that we could go ahead and move forward. So we on the bottom of the page, you could see, where the ebook is, www.amazon.com. But Adnan, if you could kind of follow up with that a little bit, buddy.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you plugging the book. And I'm honestly really honored that you like the book. That means a lot to me. Actually, probably the best place they can buy it is AdnanJalali.com. I haven't even officially launched the site yet, but it's on there. It's ready. So if you want to buy it, you can purchase it there. I don't like the Amazon version. That's the only reason I'm even mentioning that. So anyway, but Chasing 100, actually, matter of fact, man, Habeeb, I don't think I've ever, maybe I have said it once or twice in public, but very little. One of the real motivators behind there's 2 motivators behind Chasing 100. Okay, number one was I was sitting at a leadership conference and the speaker asked all of us a question. He said, what would your lives look like if you were living at 100% of your full potential? In your career, spiritually, physically, money-wise, just kind of bucket list wise, all these things. Mentally, emotionally, how would your life look if you're living at 100% of your full potential? Mm-hmm. And then the follow-up was what percentage are you living at right now? Mm-hmm. And the first question, I had no answer because I hadn't even thought that far ahead. Mm-hmm. And it never even occurred to me to think, what's my perfect life? Mm-hmm. Because just like everyone else, I'm only thinking one step ahead instead of really having faith in Allah and knowing that He can help me fulfill my best. For Him, it's very easy. For Allah to help me fulfill all of my dreams, it's very easy. It's very simple. And I didn't think that way until I was asked this question, And so instead of thinking just one step ahead, I went all the way to the end and I said, okay, when I'm on my deathbed looking back at my life, I want to be able to say this, this, and this, and this, right? Professionally, I did this. Money-wise, I was able to do this, make this and do this with my money, right? Relationships-wise, how I manage my relationships in life, all these things. So that was really the catalyst that got me going on Chasing 100. And you have a minute to share one more thing?
Of course.
Yes.
Okay. So the other thing, catalyst, was actually the last sermon of the Prophet ﷺ. Something that people don't pick up on. I haven't heard anyone talk about this anywhere. In that sermon, in the beginning of the sermon, the Prophet says to the people, listen closely, pay attention, because I might not be with you much longer. Okay. Basically, it's like, hey, my time is coming up. You better pay attention. I'm going to give you some advice, right? He goes through the list of advices, and that's what most people focus on, and that's great. But there's a part that most people don't mention. He looks up at the sky at the end and says, Ya Allah, bear witness that I delivered your message to my people. When I think of the whole context of the situation, he was essentially saying, Ya Allah, I did what I came to do, and I'm ready. I'm out. I'm ready. I'm ready to go home. And so when I think about that, I think about, okay, when I get on my deathbed, I want to have that feeling in my heart that, you know what? I'm good, man. I got everything I could out of this dunya. I'm ready to go back, right? So that's kind of another. So when you really think about it, the Prophet ﷺ reached his pinnacle. He reached his 100, right? And it's such a beautiful metaphor, standing on top of the mountain, and letting the people know I reached my top, to set an example for all of you to go and chase your top, go and make the biggest impact you can in your life. You see what I'm saying? So that's it. So that was chasing 100, man. So I want to live my life chasing my 100.
Wow. Like that, educators, parents, we gotta give our 100% in parenting, education, leadership, community activism. I love it. I mean, those are just great reminders there, you know. But you know, Imran, you have another question. We got more time. I don't know what.
I think honestly, that was like the best place to end it, man. It was very, very powerful, very impactful. So Adnan, thank you for your time, because I know, you know, we have some time restrictions as well. So thank you for your time, everybody.
No
AdnanJalali.com. Please take a look at his website. Order the book, and it's very impressive to have people who start off in education, right, as teachers, and then make their way from being a teacher to a principal, and then they're the ones who are educating the educators and teaching the teachers and teaching principals to the principals, right? So Adnan Jalali is a leadership and personal development coach. Check him out. Habeeb and Adnan, I'll give you guys the final words, inshallah.
No, just, you know, again, please, you know, I want all of us to realize there are 3 things that he brought up, and don't forget those specific 3 things, right? The idea of, you know, communication, social emotional aspect, and personal development. And I think, you know, those words of wisdom, and make sure that chasing that 100 was on point, baby. I love it. You know,
thank you so much, man. Thank you guys for having me. You know, my advice to audience would be listen to these 2 guys above me, because they're very wise. They know what they're talking about. And, you know, just it's an honor for me to share this time with you guys, and hopefully see you guys soon, inshallah.